The following program is suitable for all ages.
Buffone. A certain magic will always linger with the very name. It speaks of courage and fervor in the world's most brutal game. 55, worn by Doug Buffone, a Chicago Bear through and through. He demanded excellence of himself and anyone wearing navy blue.
You tell me what's going on. This is moronic. We're going to get our whipped all the way down the line. I want somebody to get kicked in the and get out there and play. You're getting paid to play this game. I'm playing right. I don't mind you getting beat. I got my whipped many times. But I tell you, I took somebody down with me. You are a professional team. Act like one, for God's sakes.
Football fans, this is Buffone 55. The John Buffone Show.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Buffone 55, a fast-paced approach at Chicago Bears football analysis. I am your host, John Buffone. We got a good one for you today. The Bears ending their tumultuous 2017 campaign in Minnesota. Thankfully for a lot of Bears fans, this will be the last game of the year. Can they get a win on the road to put a little cherry on top of this season? We will see. Before we jump into the show, I'm going to send it over to my trusty producer, Aldo Gandia, to tell you how the show works. Aldo, give us the rundown.
John, it works very easily. I'm going to ask you 5 questions about the Chicago Bears and then 5 questions about the Minnesota Vikings. You have 55 seconds to answer each of those questions. The 5s, of course, are a tribute to my boyhood hero and your uncle, Doug Buffone. And speaking of Doug, John, you have graciously said you'd like to share some words about the news that was reported first in the Chicago Sun-Times on the day after Christmas in a column by award-winning columnist Rick Tellender that it was titled Ex-Bears linebacker Doug Buffone, another likely victim of CTE. And just very quickly for those of our followers who are not familiar with the disease of CTE, it's apparently when a protein called tau, T-A-U, starts to form clumps in the brain and thus kills off brain cells. And it has been found to happen in people who have repeated head injuries. And so Tellender writes that ex-Bears linebacker Doug Buffone, another likely victim of CTE. And John, you wanted to address this because a lot of people have reached out to you.
Yeah, that's right. I actually talked to my Aunt Dana, which would be Doug's wife, for over 30 minutes on the phone a couple days ago. And I also talked to his daughters, which would be my cousins, Heather and Haley, as well. This isn't something they necessarily want to be doing right now. Perhaps I've been naive on this. Maybe I've been subconsciously ignorant about this. She said that she started seeing signs about 10 years ago. And talking to his daughters, they said that as of the later years of his life, he would usually ask a question about school or something, and he would ask it again 5 minutes later, and then ask it again a couple minutes later after that. And there came a time where he would forget directions to places that were only 5 minutes from the house. And then his wife, once again, my aunt, said that he became really reclusive, and she thought that he was just, he was just getting tired. I mean, there's a big age difference between them, about 18 years. So she just figured he was getting older, getting tired, getting worn down. But eventually there came a time where he would have to take down vigorous notes for a simple radio segment, maybe a 15-minute radio segment, because he was afraid that he was going to forget something and he would end up forgetting names. And she said that she still has stacks and stacks of notebooks filled to the brim with notes because he was. I mean, that's part of just Buffone anxiety mixed with he didn't want to forget anything as well. So she didn't want to believe there was something wrong. She wanted his legacy to be intact. She didn't want to think anything was wrong. And if you were in a social setting, Uncle Doug could still put on the Ritz. He could still smooth the crowd, and to the untrained eye, everything was okay. And once he passed, she said she went to this panel where a lot of NFL wives were talking about CTE, and they were bringing up the symptoms and talking about the disease. And all of a sudden, there was this weird epiphany. She said, "Oh my God, that was Doug." So I believe she and the family are doing this for some answers. She wants her kids to understand why he may have been the way he was during the later stages of his life. And I mean, this isn't an easy process. I mean, we're talking about exhuming a grave. We're talking about digging up someone's grave now, and to test the brain for CTE. And for those asking if the brain can still be tested this long after someone's passed, because Uncle Doug passed nearly 2 years ago, apparently it can last well over a decade in some cases once it's buried. So that the brain can still be tested for something like this. And the results will apparently come back in 6 to 8 months, and that will set into motion any lawsuit they plan on going forward with. But I want to say this. When I talked to my aunt, I felt the pain in her voice when I was talking to her on the phone. I felt the pain of a woman who was confused on what happened to her husband. I mean, we are reopening old wounds, and I don't know who would want to do that unless they really needed some closure. She said he never got violent, which can sometimes be a symptom of this, but it was apparent that something was wrong. And CTE may not be why he died, but it will explain a lot as to what was happening while he was living. And I hope they get the closure they need. I mean, this shocked me. And I had a brief conversation with him when I was a young teenager about this, and he said he made it out okay. And maybe he didn't want to have it. Maybe he didn't want to admit that maybe something was wrong. And maybe I was just too young to think about it. After I asked the question, I took his word for it, and I moved on from that. So to be honest, I would like some answers as well. So I hope everyone gets some closure out of this situation, and we can move forward from that. I mean, it's not something everybody really wants to go through, talking about reopening old wounds. But hopefully, moving forward with this, we can get some answers.
Totally agree, John. My heart goes out to you and the entire Buffone family, to your Aunt Dana, her daughters. This is not, of course, easy for them. And as a lifetime fan of Doug, and I can tell you all of Doug's fans, this is not easy as well. We still have so much to learn about the dangers of professional football, and we also need to get to the bottom of just what the NFL knew and what didn't they share. There's been some legal cases, there's been some settlements on that, but I think there's still more reporting to do on this. And I know a lot of people complain about rule changes that are designed to protect against head injuries. But when you are so close to the players who have suffered as a result of these head injuries, I can't see why anyone would not want to do whatever is possible to try to reduce the severity of these head injuries, because it is definitely something very scary and something no family should go through, and it doesn't matter what you're being paid. So we still love the violence of the game, and there still should be some room for that, but to protect a person's brain, I can't think of anything more important than that. Any final words on this topic, John?
Just basically, I appreciate everybody that kind of reached out to me and asked for questions. I'm sorry that I didn't get back to them as soon as possible, because, like I said, I was kind of shocked when the article in the Sun-Times came out, and I mean, this is something that I actually didn't really know about, and I think that they didn't really want to bring it up, and all of a sudden the whole thing kind of exploded. So I wanted to make sure that I contacted my Aunt Dana. I wanted to talk to his daughters. I wanted to talk to some of his kids, and I just wanted to get their feelings before I really said anything, because I was in shock and I didn't know how to react when I first saw it. So that's why I appreciate everybody bearing with me to wait till now to kind of get my feelings on that.
Appreciate you doing that very much. All right, let's get on with the football portion of the show. Again, I will ask John 5 questions about the Chicago Bears and then 5 questions about the Vikings. He has 55 seconds to respond to each question. And our first question is very simple. Take me through what you liked about the Chicago Bears win over the Cleveland Browns on Christmas Eve. And John, you are on the clock.
Well, I like that they didn't Bears it up, because this had every potential of being a kind of I don't want to say a trap game, but a letdown game, which it's hard to say if there's anything's more of a letdown than the Bears in general. But, Trubisky looked solid. He looked kind of confident. I liked that they didn't necessarily come out flat to start the second half after a pretty boring first half. Kyle Fuller looked good again. The defense looked pretty good against a bad offense, and you can't take that for granted when you're a Bears fan. Playing well when you're supposed to play well cannot be underemphasized with this ball club. And then, like I said, the defense picked off Deshaun Kaiser twice. They looked pretty good. They kept the run game in check collectively. The Browns only mustered up about 76 yards. Honestly, my favorite part of this was there was a good chance for them to let us down. A lot of us said it wouldn't be surprising for the Bears to let the Browns sneak in and get a win, and the Bears would be the only win for the Cleveland Browns this year. So I say this in jest, but also kind of seriously when I say the fact that they were able to overcome incredibly average expectations. That was kind of promising to me.
I agree with you. I love what you say. You never underestimate the value of a win. And not only did the Bears need the win, but the city of Chicago and all us Bears fans needed that win desperately. To lose to the Browns would have been nauseating, would be the nicest way to put it. Okay, John, let's be critical here. It's important to always be self-critical about yourself and the teams that you love. What didn't you like about the Bears win against the Browns, or the Bears performance, I should say, against the Browns? You are on the clock.
Well, I think it's an issue that the team's been having all year. It's giving up a lot of receptions to running backs. Duke Johnson had 7 catches for 81 yards. Obviously, it didn't play a huge part in the game, but they don't defend the screens well. Listen to some of these running back stats against the Bears. Le'Veon Bell, 6 receptions. Jarrett McKinnon, 6 receptions. Christian McCaffrey, 7 receptions. In the Saints game, Mark Ingram had 6 for 24, and Alvin Kamara had 3 for 48. Against the Bengals, Gio Bernard had 6 for 68. So the yardage isn't a crazy killer for these, but sometimes that can be the difference between a first down and, a punt. So what else didn't I like? I think the fact that there's a Christmas Eve game in Chicago and no one wanted to be there. I hated seeing that many empty seats. And obviously it didn't help that it was the Browns. I get that. But I'm tired of December football meaning jack squat in Chicago. That was disheartening. This was a snowy, cold weather game in Chicago, and it meant nothing. Nobody wanted to go. So I want snowy football in Chicago to mean something again. That's what I didn't like.
Boy, you are so right about that. I remember as a kid, I went to a December game, Chicago Bears versus the Cardinals. I think they were still in St. Louis at the time, and it was snowing and it was cold. And I had a little portable 8-inch TV set, so I was watching replays, and everyone around me was huddled around me to watch the replays of a Peyton run and so forth. Had the time of my life. I don't even remember if the Bears were in the playoff hunt or anything, but it was just fun being out there in the cold and enjoying Bears football, and you just don't get that sense anymore. It's sad.
No, you don't.
All right, well, maybe part of the reason why has to do with the topic of our next question. 14 wins, 33 losses, a .298 winning percentage, second worst in Bears history. A dismal record within the division, no playoff appearances. Those are some of the noteworthy numbers of the John Fox era. If, as expected, he is fired on Monday, what will be your lasting thoughts about the John Fox era in Chicago? You are on the clock.
He was the safe pick that completely and utterly backfired. The Bears went off the rails with the Trestman hire, so they kind of came back to the middle with John Fox, the guy with an ultra-conservative approach to the game. And let's not forget that he got booted from Denver for a reason. This is a guy that never really inspired Chicago fans, and I get that you don't want to just appease the thoughts of rabid fans. If you end up taking all the opinions of the fans, you're going to end up sitting with them. That's the old adage. But he came in here, and Bears fans were pretty him-haw on him. It was kind of an average response when it came to the hiring. And then what he should be doing to try to win over the fans, he should be trying to win games. But he didn't have a good product, and he did the exact opposite. And then he explained it in a rather self-righteous tone, and that's what makes these fans so absolutely crazy. He was the rebuild coach that now the Bears have to rebuild from. He was underwhelming when he got here. He gave the fans nothing to grab onto. He infuriated everyone with his demeanor, and he can't get out of this Bears organization soon enough. Listen, I wanted to give him a chance, but when you see your team that has this kind of talent get outwitted every week from the other side of the field, on the sidelines, from the other coaching staff, you have to say enough is enough. And I had enough months ago. Monday cannot come soon enough.
Wow, John, you expressed our displeasure as well as anyone that I've heard express it. Thank you very much. I just might grab that clip and send it out on social media. That's good stuff. Thank you very much for that.
Yes, sir.
Now, question number 4. John, have you put together your list of coaches you'd like to see the Bears interview, and what qualities most interest you in the future coach for this team? What type of a young person, what are the qualities, I mean to say, that you would like to see a coach who will handle this young personnel that this team now currently possesses? John, you're on the clock.
I mean, I've been thinking about this since August, and it's unfortunate that most of us saw Fox getting canned before the season even started, and that's kind of how it worked out. But I had this idea, and apparently it's not a novel idea because I see it getting a lot of traction on social media. Frank Reich, the OC for Philadelphia, I have no problem with bringing him over in a combo package with quarterback coach John DeFilippo as offensive coordinator. These guys are running a highly effective Doug Peterson system, and they're also responsible for the big leap that Carson Wentz took this season as an MVP candidate. I mean, I like that idea, and I know Dave Tope has a real chance to be a head coach, and he has some Bears connections. And then Josh McDaniels could probably have his pick of coaching jobs. You saw what he did in Denver, but sometimes you have to take your lumps in the first job, circle back, and do it right, kind of like Bill Belichick did. But there are some other candidates out there. Pat Shermer's name is thrown around. The former Browns coach has helped Case Keenum exceed expectations in Minnesota. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I don't want to discard the defense either. It's important, and they need the right guy. But it is ultra important to get the right guy for Mitchell Trubisky right now. The next 5 to 7 years of the Bears organization depend on this hire. I don't think that's being dramatic, to be honest with you. The fate of Trubisky could rest on his hire. The fate of Brian Pace obviously depends on this hire. And the next half decade of Bears football will depend on this hire. So they better get it right.
You are so right about that. My goodness, if they make another mistake with the head coach, oh, jeepers!
It sets them back almost a decade because you lose your quarterbacks. You draft a quarterback high, and maybe he doesn't pan out, and all of a sudden we're talking about hope for the 2025 season.
Yep, I just picture a bunch of us in front of Hallis Hall with signs, saying "sell the team" or something like that, because that's what we have to do next. That's what we like to do here at the Bears Barroom, is just be kind of active fans and not just watch and shrug our shoulders and say, wait till next year. We want to complain. We want responses. We want action. And so if they mess up this next coach hire, oh boy, we're going to really turn on the heat.
Yes, sir.
All right, number 5, during the offseason, what position groups should be the main priorities for player acquisition? Please prioritize them for us and telling us why. You are on the clock.
Well, I got a shopping list here. First and foremost, it starts with the receivers. I mean, you need to go out and get a free agent, and maybe they grab one in the draft. I'm not totally sold on getting one in the first round, but you need to surround Trubisky with so many weapons that there's absolutely no excuse to fail when the new coach comes in. Second on my list would be edge rushers. Pernell McPhee is probably gone. You need to pair someone up with Leonard Floyd and make the defense scary for opposing quarterbacks. You need to shore up the defense with another edge rusher. I have corner on here, depending on what they want to do with Amukamara and especially Kyle Fuller. They haven't had bad play out of the corners this year. They've had somewhat good play out of them, but they need to keep it that way. And if they don't keep either one of those guys, then they're going to be in trouble when it comes to that position. And then we look at the depth at offensive line. You need to shore up the depth for sure. Look at the tackles. You have Leno and Massey. They're there. I mean, honestly, I think you got to go out and maybe get a center. I don't really think Cody Whitehair needs to be the center of the future. He's a guard. He played well at guard. Hronis Grasu probably is not the answer at center. So you go ahead and get the center of the line shored up, and the guards will be better. Then you fortify the tackles, and then we're talking about, I know that's a lot of stuff, but I mean, that's what they could be trying to shore up there. And finally, on this list, I have kicker. Get somebody worth a damn. I don't care who it is. Get somebody who can kick field goals. That should not be a hard thing to check off the list when it comes to signing a kicker. Get someone better than Connor Barth. Get somebody better than Cairo Santos. Get somebody better than Mike Nugent.
I hear you on that. That is a long Christmas list, John.
Yes,
so
I'm asking a lot. I understand.
Yes, I think Santa is wondering what's going on there in Chicago football. I got to take a closer look. Well, I'll tell you what's happening with Minnesota football has been quite impressive this year. So our next 5 questions are dedicated to the Vikings, the Bears' upcoming opponent for their final regular season game. Question number 1. When you talk about the Vikings, in my mind, you begin by talking about their defense. How dominant is Mike Zimmer's unit? John, you're on the clock.
Well, you're looking at a rush defense. It's only allowed 19 runs of 10-plus yards this year. That's the fewest in the NFL. And just for comparison, Denver's second, having allowed 27. So they are far above anybody else in that category. And then you look at some of the guys who are progressing. The defensive end, Everson Griffin, he's fourth in the NFL with a career-high 13 sacks. And that's like the third. That is the third time in his career he's reached double-digit sacks. At the linebacking core, you got Eric Hendricks, who's led the Vikings in tackles his first 2 seasons, and also has 126 tackles this year. And then let's go over to the secondary. You got a safety in Harrison Smith, who's the only player in the NFL with 70-plus tackles and a sack and at least 5 interceptions. Those are some crazy statistics from Harrison Smith. All around, they're not really light in one area, really. Still, I mean, the Bears did have a chance to win the last game in Chicago, but the offensive stats weren't great. Mitch was 12 for 25 with a touchdown, but let's not forget that was his first NFL start. So you're going to have to capitalize when you get a chance against this defense because they won't slip up much. They're first in total defense and will allow only 87 yards on the ground, which is not a good statistic if you're the Bears offense.
Yeah, you mentioned Harrison Smith, and I was talking to B.J. Rydell over on his podcast that you can find at VikingsTerritory.com. I was a guest on his show, and the folks in Minnesota are just as angry about the snub Harrison Smith got for the Pro Bowl as we are here in Chicago regarding the snub of Akeem Hicks. It's incomprehensible why Harrison Smith, who I agree with is probably one of the top 2 or 3 safeties in the NFL, was not voted in the Pro Bowl. But sometimes that happens when you've got a team just loaded with talent. It's hard to identify one guy for individual honors.
Sure, without a doubt.
Yeah. All right, on to question number 2. On offense, this Vikings team cannot be taken lightly. What's your assessment of this side of the football for the Vikings? And, John, you're on the clock.
Well, they overcame some big injuries this year. The running back core with Jerick McKinnon and Latavius Murray, they filled in pretty nicely after rookie Dalvin Cook went down. The running back group has over 2,200 yards from scrimmage this year. That's around 5th highest in the NFL for all running back groups. They rank 10th in the NFL in yards per game, which has been led by the consistent play of, Adam Thielen, who is 5th in the NFL with 1,215 receiving yards and tied for 7th in the NFL with 85 receptions. Also, they got Stephon Diggs, who can break open a play at any moment's notice. So, but it starts with quarterback Case Keenum. I don't think I'd ever say that. I don't know if I ever thought that I would say Case Keenum has been the catalyst for all this. But he has completed 67% of his passes. That's 4th in the NFL. He's stepped in really well in his 13 starts. He has 21 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. Career high best 98.1 passer rating. And remember when this guy got run out of LA? So that's kind of like why you don't go out and hire Jeff Fisher as your head coach. So pay attention, Ryan Pace. So don't even start thinking about the whole Jeff Fisher thing, because if you want to see Chicago burn, that's going to be one way to do it. Hire Jeff Fisher. So once again, I don't know how much of the starters we'll actually see in this game. They could be resting by halftime. They don't have a whole lot to gain out of this game, but they have a really good offense.
Yeah, I'd heard that too, that the Vikings are hoping to get off to a big lead so that they can rest some starters. But this is an important game for them. And Mike Zimmer can be very conservative when it comes to resting starters. B.J. Rydell told me the last time he rested starters in a game was when they had a 31-point lead. And I don't think they're going to get a 31-point lead on the Bears. But
let's hope.
Well, yeah, really. All right, question number 3. Speaking of Mike Zimmer, is there a case for Mike Zimmer winning the Coach of the Year honors? John, you're on the clock.
Yeah, I mean, you can make a case for it. I mean, he's maximized talent from potential, especially from the defensive side of the ball. He built a team that can overcome injuries and believes it can win a Super Bowl with Case Keenum. That is no easy task. That being said, I don't think that he wins it. The LA Rams were a laughingstock coming into December. People were criticizing the hire of Sean McVay saying he's too young and he's going to be in over his head. And now look at them. They're going to win the NFC West. They're 11-4. They maybe saved Jared Goff's career, got Todd Gurley back humming it on all cylinders. Then you kind of look at the job that Doug Peterson did in Philly without the injury to Carson Wentz. They are probably the heavy favorite to win the NFC, maybe the Super Bowl. Let's not discount Doug Marone's job in Jacksonville. That's another good candidate. And then Sean McDermott. I mean, he could be the first coach in nearly 2 decades to take the Bills to the playoffs. I mean, I'm thinking maybe the decision to start Nate Peterman in that one game probably disqualified him from contention. But, Zimmer does have a good chance, but all of my money is on McVay in L.A.
Yeah, I think that's a good pick and a safe pick with McVay. That's just an incredible turnaround. 1 season turnaround. Zimmer's had a few seasons to turn around this team, and they started 5-0 last season. The Vikings did. I thought they were going to the Super Bowl last year, but then injuries hit and they lost a ton of games. All right, question number 4. With a win, the Vikings would be 13-3, and that would make them only the 76th team in NFL history to win 13 or more victories in a season. Now, based on those numbers and the talent that you cited earlier, is this a Super Bowl team that the Bears will play on Sunday? John, you're on the clock.
I think so. I mean, the Eagles were the number 1 seed going into this, but obviously they're going to have Nick Foles as their quarterback. So I think the NFC playoff picture is as wide open as I've ever seen it. We talked about the talented Minnesota roster with Case Keenum. The Rams are really good, but how will they respond to their first playoff trip in Los Angeles? Jared Goff's first playoff experience. The Saints are another big threat, but they'll probably get 1 home game, then potentially have to play in cold weather if they have to go to Philly. I mean, you throw in the Panthers with Cam Newton, and no one really wants to face them. Then the 6th seed could be either Seattle or Atlanta. So, I mean, you could make a case for every team in the NFC playoff picture right now. So is Minnesota a Super Bowl caliber team? Yes, because it's determined by the situation, and there's really no juggernaut in the NFC bracket right now. Personally, I'm picking the Saints. I think they have the best quarterback in the playoffs. I think their offense resembles the same one that won them the Super Bowl back in 2009. And I think enough teams are down to make the road a little easier for them. I wasn't super impressed by the Saints when they played the Bears, but I'm not going to bet against Drew Brees in this bracket right now.
All right, good pick. Okay, question number 5, our final question. John, here we go again. Our final question is, before you predict the outcome of the game, is we ask you to do this position-by-position comparison between the Bears and their opponent, and we ask you to do it all within 55 seconds. So why don't you take a sip of water and ready, set, go.
All right, this all depends on whether or not the starters play the entire game. So let's start at quarterback. I hate saying this, but Keenum is hot. He's the hot hand right now. Looks like he has a solid grip on the Vikings offense. But how long is he going to play? I don't know. I'm going to give the edge to the Bears. There's a curveball for you. The edge is going to the Bears for the quarterback. Running back, give me Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen over McKinnon and Murray. They're more dynamic. They can gash you for more yards. Edge, Bears. 2-0 so far for the Bears. Wide receiver, Thielen and Diggs are far beyond anything the Bears could possibly trot out there on Sunday. The Bears have to be wary of those two downfield. Advantage, Vikings. Defense, we talked about how incredibly talented the Minnesota defense is. The Bears are getting closer, but they're not at this level yet. So that's an advantage, Vikings. So it's 2-2. So what does it come down to? Special teams. Who's Minnesota's kicker? Who cares? He's better than who the Bears have right now. The Bears kicker, who is it? Ted Nugent. He's the kicker for the Bears right now. I'm just kidding. The kicker for the the kicker for the Vikings, Kai Forbath. He's better than Mike Nugent. So looking over the rundown, that would be 3-2 in favor of Minnesota.
Well done. Well done. Well, then when you throw the coaching in there, it's 20-2.
Oh, forget about it. Forget about it.
Very well done. All right, John. Why don't you close the show with your prediction? And again, thanks for saying those personal comments about your Uncle Doug. That meant a lot to us fans listening in.
No problem at all. All right, let's jump into the prediction. I wanted the Bears to at least be able to play Grinch this year and screw up somebody's playoff hopes because, misery loves company, and they're literally playing a team with nothing to lose now. So that kind of sucks. There's not a whole lot that happens out of this if the Bears win. I think the Vikings do jump out early. Maybe they do start resting their guys in the second half. I think the Bears are going to still struggle to get going. They're on the road on the final week of a bad season. I think they probably make a couple dumb mistakes, and we end the John Fox era with a 17-10 loss. I think the Bears lose 17-10, and then after they lose 17-10, the players run out to John Fox. They put him on their shoulders, they carry him off the field, and they dump him in the parking lot. There's your storybook ending for the John Fox era. I think that he loses his last game as the Chicago Bears head coach 17-10. And before we go, I just want to say you can go to bearsbarroom.com for all the latest on John Fox's status. We prepare to go live here on mixlr.com when the news of Fox's status is announced. The website will soon be featuring tons of draft and free agency news. And as for this show, we will be back next Wednesday. I know we're usually on Thursday, but we're coming back on Wednesday for the season finale. You're not going to want to miss this. It's going to be a great wrap-up of the Bears season. So until next time, I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next week.